Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today with my 2023 reading wrap-up. Now, this is the first of several videos that I'll do wrapping up 2023. This one will give you an overview of my reading year with some fun facts and statistics, as well as my top picks of the year in several different categories. And then I'll do a separate video with my top 10 fiction reads of the year and my best nonfiction reads of the year. And probably, like I did last year, one combining middle grade and young adult into one video. So you've got that to look forward to. So let's get started. As you can see, I'm still recording in front of our Christmas tree. Because our son left for work for the week and left a big pile of presents and stocking stuffers piled in front of our bookcase. So yeah, I thought it'd be easier to just record here again. Okay, so drum roll please. I read a total of 76 books in 2023. Now, unlike many people here on BookTube and elsewhere, I don't set a quantitative goal for how many books to read in a year, like the Goodreads challenge. I don't do that. I just find it limiting. I read a lot of big books. As you know, if you followed along or participated in my Big Book Summer Challenge this year. And, you know, I'd rather focus on choosing the best books possible than worrying about the number. So 76 is one more than last year. It's a few less than the year before, but that's fine. It's all in the same range. All I care about is that I'm really reading good books. So a few fun facts, how my reading broke out last year. Of the 76 books I read last year, 46% of them were adult fiction. Definitely my favorite kind of books to read. So that was 59% of what I read. I read 6 adult nonfiction and a total of 12 nonfiction books in all. Of those 12, 7 of them were memoir, which is about typical for me. I do tend, when I read nonfiction, I do gravitate toward memoir. Interestingly, things kind of went very evenly from there. So 12 nonfiction books in total. And there's some overlap now in these additional categories, because like if a book was nonfiction and middle grade and audio, then it fell into all categories. Of the 76 books in total that I read, 12 of them were young adult, 12 were middle grade. As I said, it just fell out kind of evenly there. I listened to 29 books on audio. I love audiobooks. That was 30% of the total of what I read last year. So I do a lot of my reading with my ears. I read 7 graphic novels or graphic memoirs. And again, those overlap with some of the other categories. Definitely enjoying graphic novels and memoirs. I've got a lot of catching up to do. I've got some backlog there, as I do in every category. So I'm hoping to read even more in the coming year. I read 6 classics in 2023, and they were all excellent. I did not read any short story collections or poetry collections. So that's how the categories kind of fell out. Here are some fun facts, some statistics from my reading. 48 of my 76 books were written by women authors, so that's 63%. 40 of my books, a little over 50%, were diverse books, either by diverse authors or featuring diverse characters. That was slightly lower than the year before. From my own shelves, I read about 30 books. You'll see in a minute that that falls short of my goal. However, and I might want to change this, when I count books from my own shelf, I'm only counting the physical books. that are actually on my shelf because there are so many and they keep growing. So I'm not counting audiobooks, almost all of which came from my backlog, or ebooks, only the books physically on my shelves. I had 0 rereads last year. The authors that I read more than once in 2023 are Maddie Dalrymple. I read 2 of her wonderful paranormal mystery thrillers last year, featuring Anne Kinnear, a woman who can sense spirits. I love those books. It's one of the few series that I read. I read 2 books by Annie Hartnett. One of them was my last novel of the year. I met her at Booktopia in May, and I've just absolutely been loving her books. Those are not a series, but 2 separate novels that she's written. And I forgot to write it down, but I just remembered. I also read 2 books by Lisa McMahon, a YA author I adore. And they were, the reason I sort of didn't think of it when I was making my list is because I read them one after the other. They were short books and they kind of went together. That was Bang, trying to think which order they went in, Crash and Bang, the first 2 books in a trilogy. She writes for young adults and paranormal thrillers, which I really enjoy. According to Goodreads, I do look at their year-end summary, even though I don't set a numerical goal. The shortest book I read last year was Dreamer by Akim Ali. That was 128 pages. It was a older middle grade, teen, young adult graphic memoir. The longest book I read last year, I read a lot of long books, thanks to Big Book Summer. The longest one was Voyager by Diana Gabaldon. No surprise there. That weighed in at 870 pages. My average book length was 344 pages. And according to Goodreads, the total number of pages I read in 2023 was 25,841. Now, interesting, those last 2 facts, the average book length, the pages read, and the books read actually, are almost identical to the year before. So my reading habits seem to be very stable over the years, at least over the last few years. Okay, now my favorite part. I'm going to go through my top picks in each of a bunch of different categories. And as I said, I'll do a more thorough top 10 sort of list. It's not always 10 in each of the categories in later videos. Okay, so there is one book that I would have picked for my best just about everything, but I do like to, and actually the same thing happened with middle grade and graphic novel. So, but I like to choose something different for each of these best of categories. So kind of share the love. So my best novel of the year, actually tied with another that you'll hear about, was The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. Absolutely loved reading this, and I have no doubt that the enjoyment I got out of it was multiplied by doing it as a buddy read with Nikki of Red Dot Reads. She's taking a little break from her channel right now, but we're still in touch. This was a great book to buddy read. There is just so much to it, and Nikki and I really enjoyed sharing our thoughts with each other. My best nonfiction book of the year was The Zookeeper's Wife by Diane Ackerman. Read lots of good nonfiction as well as fiction, but this one really stood out. It was one of my nonfiction November reads. It's a book that had been on my TBR list since its release in 2007, and actually on my shelf for over a year. This was an amazing book. It's history, but it's also about animals and people and connections. It's very character driven, just outstanding. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. The best memoir that I read in 2023 was How to Forget by Kate Mulgrew. This was one that I listened to on audio, again in Nonfiction November. It is a memoir of her caring for her dying parents as her father died of cancer and her mother very slowly dealt with and died of Alzheimer's disease. Kate Mulgrew's a famous actress. She read the memoir herself, which made it extra good, but her writing is just so good. It was a very, very powerful book, especially listened to on audio. Speaking of audio, my top audio book read in 2023, listened to in 2023, was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Now, this was actually the first book I read in 2023, back in January. I started the audio at the beginning of January. It took me the entire month to listen to it. And when it finished, I wanted to go back to the beginning and start it again. I did not want to leave the characters. I didn't want to leave the story. I'm a longtime Barbara Kingsolver fan. Usually I prefer her older stuff, Poisonwood Bible, Bean Trees, Pigs in Heaven. I love all of her books, but those are usually my favorites, but she's outdone herself with Demon Copperhead. It would have also been my top novel of the year, except, like I said, I like to kind of spread the wealth and name something different for each category. Just an outstanding book, and especially good on audio. If you missed this one last year, definitely try to get to it in 2024. Just mind-blowingly good. You just live in that world while you're listening to it. Highly recommended. My best teen YA novel or book was also on audio. Interestingly, you're seeing a theme here. Lots of my favorite books were audiobooks. And it was called This Is Our Place by Vitor Martin. It's set in either South America, Brazil maybe? I'll look it up and include that here. This was a really unique novel told in 3 different stories from the point of view of the house that the 3 different characters have lived in. And so it jumps from 2000, when there's a teen girl living there, to 2010, when there's a teen boy living there, to 2020, when there is another teen boy there, an older teen, getting through the pandemic with his mother and sister. Each of the 3 characters also has in common that they are gay or queer, and just a fascinating book. Really well done. You know, something like that could end up gimmicky with the house doing the narrating, but it wasn't at all. It just had a lot of heart. You saw how these people were connected, even though they had never met. Really enjoyed that. So that was my best YA for the year. My best middle grade novel, also a contender for best graphic memoir. Not a novel. My best middle grade book was A First Time for Everything by Dan Santat. Could have also been my best graphic memoir of the year. It's about the author's trip to Europe in the year before he started high school that really changed his life, and how it led to his love of and career as an artist. It ended up winning the National Book Award for young person's literature this year. So well-deserved on that. Definitely recommend that. My best graphic novel of the year, graphic novel / memoir. This one's a graphic novel. Again, could also be my best middle grade book of the year, but I tried to spread things out. Beowulf by Zach Weinersmith and Boulay, who did the illustrations. You heard me, if you watch my channel often, you heard me rave about this book in November. Just outstanding, a middle grade take, a modern middle grade take on Beowulf, which is clever and funny and engaging. I absolutely loved it, and I wish it had been around when my sons were young. They would have loved it too. And finally, my best classic of the year was The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I've read a lot of good classics. This had some competition, but overall, I hadn't read this since 10th grade, a long time ago. I remembered liking it in 10th grade, and I had an amazing English teacher, so we had some great class discussions on it, but it had been a very long time. All that I remembered was the basic plot outline. So reading it now as an adult, many decades later, I was just blown away by Steinbeck's writing. Obviously, he's a classic for a reason. By the depth of compassion in this book. It has humor. It's heartwarming. It's a fascinating look at a historical period. It just has everything. So that is my first of my 2023 reading wrap-ups. That gives you an overview of my reading year and the highlights. Like I said, I will come back with some top 10 lists for you for fiction, nonfiction, and YA middle grade. I would love to hear about your reading year in 2023. Let me know in the comments down below, what were your top books of the year? How many books did you read? Any highlights that you want to share with me, I would love to hear about it.